Welcome to the Art of Money podcast with Art McPherson.
And thanks for checking out the Art of Money podcast. My name is Mark Owens alongside Art McPherson and Luke McCarty. All the information for the McPherson Financial Group, you can find it at theartofmoneyradio.com. We can't do a show without talking about inflation. It's here to stay. We all know the cost of living is rising, but what we don't know is whether it's temporary or it's just the new normal. BlackRock chief Larry Fink told CNBC he thinks rising prices, well, unfortunately, they're here to stay.
Post-World War II, economic policy was based on consumerism. We always believed that the cheapest products for Americans was the best way that more Americans can have more things. And now we are saying jobs are more important than consumerism. That is going to probably lead to a systematically more inflation. I'm hearing from every CEO that they have huge price increases and they're passing them on across the board here in the United States and in Europe.
So Art McPherson, Luke McCarty, it sounds like he's saying that retirees just get used to new higher prices. But how do we deal with that when we're no longer working?
Well, that's a great question, because the way you deal with it while you're working, right, is hopefully you make more money every year, right? You get a cost of living increase, you may get a raise, you may get a new job that pays more. But when you're not working, right, you may be reliant upon Social Security, which we may see a big increase this year. We don't know yet. And then you need to rely on your investments and your savings. So as things get more expensive, your assets need to keep up with what you need to spend them on, right? So I was at Publix this last weekend, and I bought 4 steaks, and they were $67 for 4 steaks. Now, they were Prime. I'm spoiled. I got Prime. But they used to not be $67, right? The gas to get me there was expensive. Mm-hmm. So things are going up. And, I have time in my career to, potentially, hopefully, earn more money as things get more and more expensive. But you're right. When you're retired, it's a big risk. Inflation risk is a big, big risk in retirement.
Well, and it does seem that our politicians are not helping any, because I think they have a money tree up there in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that the politicians, I don't think, understand really well is every time you ask for more money and you have to print it because you don't have more money, you're devaluing the currency. So when they do that kind of a strategy and you base it off of, spending needs and spending concerns, rather than saying, why don't we maybe reduce the size of our government and reduce some of these expenses and get it under control? They haven't done that. Because of that, because we just went through COVID, because we have, a huge exodus right now of people leaving the big cities, moving to rural areas. We have the big boom going on with housing. We have this huge boom going on, people moving. We have just a lot of things happening. Well, we've got some inflationary things that are setting in, and it seems like everything that could be done wrong right now by our politicians are being done wrong. So it looks like higher prices are here to stay for a while. The Fed and kind of the general consensus as we kind of entered this new phase of higher costs is this a COVID thing, or is this going to be more permanent? So now we're starting to hear stories of maybe this is more permanent. So it is something we definitely have to factor in when we are talking about inflation with our clients, because we want to make sure that if it's going to be not 2.5–3% anymore, it's going to be 4 or 5%. We need to build that in our modeling so that they have enough money in 20 years, not just now.
Do you think it'll decrease even like the smallest percentage, or do you think that it's going to continue to slowly rise, or will it, fluctuate a little bit?
It just depends. Right now we got a lot of jumps. I mean, I've heard when we ship things overseas, those container ships are up like 300%, 400%, 500%. Just the shipping cost to move things across the United States. You're paying surcharges again for fuel, because fuel, back in November was $1.85 a gallon, and now we're at pushing $3 a gallon. So you have costs across the board are going up, and it affects everything. So rather than us actually opening up drilling here and making things cheaper for oil and for fuel, we've been restrictive on that. So our current president has restricted oil flow and restricted fuel flow, which is increasing costs internally. So rather than us doing the things that could be helpful of the problem, we're doing things that are actually accentuating the problem.
I got one of those, the child tax credit. I got the letter from the IRS, and it was signed by the president at the bottom and said, we're going to give you so much money a month because you have a kid. Am I going to get taxed on that at the end of the year as well?
Right. So those child tax payments you may be receiving, right? That's a prepayment of your child tax credit that you would have received, right, when you file your taxes in, call it April, right? So if you can actually opt out of those, Mark, if you don't want them. You can opt out and then just take it on your tax return. So if you're expecting a big refund, and you always get refunds because you have multiple kids or whatever it may be, well, your refund's not going to be as large because you're getting part of it every month.
As we're talking about taxes, a lot of us are hoping to see our taxes decline when we retire, but that's not necessarily the case. You're still going to owe taxes on your investment income, and Morningstar's Christine Benz says the same is true for your house.
Many homeowners are shouldering higher and higher property taxes. That's not a situation that is going to get any better anytime soon in most large urban centers. When I think about retirees who I know well, it's the biggest ticket item in their household, actually, their outlays for property taxes.
Property taxes, income taxes. Art, we've been talking about it this entire segment. You know, what's one of our first steps that we should take to manage these different taxes when we're no longer getting that regular paycheck?
Just make sure they're affordable in that budget. You know, that's why Luke and I start there on that budget, because if property tax and your insurance for where you're living has outpriced you and outpriced your standard of living, then you probably want to make a change to that. You know, as an example, I talked about this before in the show. My dad's still in the house that I grew up in here in Satellite Beach. Well, that house he bought on the river back in 1972, lot and house on the river, was only $28,800. Well, today it's worth about $700,000. So now, one of the things that the state of Florida does is it slows down the increases that can happen to someone like my dad, who's an older gentleman now in retirement mode. So it keeps him from going up too fast, where he couldn't afford the tax rate and have to move just because of the taxes. They do slow that down. But if that house is ever sold to somebody else, they're going to have to pay tax on $700,000. And that is a bigger tax burden, especially when you're on the water, than $28,800 was, for sure.
Thanks for listening. Want more from Art McPherson of McPherson Financial Group? Find us online at artofmoneyradio.com. We are an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of financial and insurance products to custom suit their needs and objectives. Securities offered through World Equity Group, Inc., member FINRA and SIPC, a registered investment advisor. Investment advisory services offered through ProStatus Group, LLC. McPherson Financial Group and ProStatus Group, LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by World Equity Group, Inc. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Investment financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. Art McPherson is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult with your attorney, accountant, and or tax advisor for advice concerning your particular circumstances. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Arthur McPherson. Florida Insurance License number A174. 725.
Today's show has been a work of art.